Hey, thanks for agreeing to meet me. It means a lot. So, listen, I've had a lot on my mind lately, and I've just been thinking a lot about life and about what's important, and honestly, I've been thinking a lot about you. Guess what I'm trying to say is, I want to give us another shot. What do you say?
This video is brought to you by Dislyte.
Hello there. Gouache is the single greatest enemy of my existence. As someone who uses a lot of acrylic paint, I have a lot of people asking me, "Is that gouache?" To which I respond, I don't know how to use gouache. But listen, I'm all here for expanding my horizons, advancing my artistic abilities, you know, gaining the clout from being able to competently use more than one traditional medium. So we're trying this again, because by golly, if Peter Parker can hold down a job for more than 6 months, then I can learn how to use a new kind of paint. So today, I'm going to be drawing characters that aren't mine, because this video is sponsored by Dislyte, which is a free-to-play, futuristic, stylish, pop fantasy RPG. I'll be honest, I'm not much of a gamer, unless we're talking The Elder Scrolls Online or Spider-Man PS4. I'm just too busy awfulizing about my breakup with an art supply. But what I do have is a magpie brain, which means that if you put pretty colors and nice character designs in front of me, I'll be entertained for hours. And Dislyte has just that. In the game, you follow Bryn, aka Valkyrie, in her journey to becoming an Esper, which is basically a demigod, because her bandmate gets kidnapped by this doggo at the beginning of the game, and you have to learn how to use your powers with the help of this doggo, and you gradually unlock other characters and do a lot of fighting. There's lots of fun character interactions, animatic cutscenes, and animations where you do those fun battles where you assemble teams based on the characters that work best together, and then you fight cool monsters in this format, which I actually couldn't figure out what it's called, but you know, this one, it's the perfect game to chill to when you go outside and pretend to enjoy nature, but you're actually just still glued to your phone. So for you gamers who are into that, you can download Dislyte for free at the link in my description. It really helps me out, so thank you so much to everyone who does that, and thank you to Dislyte for sponsoring this video and giving me pretty characters to draw while I suffer through using gouache. Okay. So today I'm going to be using my Arctics gouache. They sent a few cases to me for free a few years ago, so thank you, Arctics. But because gouache and I historically have not gotten along super well, I haven't used these paints in probably a 1.5 to 2 years. And if you're familiar with gouache, then you know what happens. The paint tends to completely dry out and it gets really, really crusty. One of these is unopened, so it should be fine, but the other one, as you can see, is just completely dried out. So before I get started on painting, I'm gonna have to try to reconstitute these paints, which is doable. I've watched a couple of tutorials and I think that I can do it. If not, I do have an unopened case, even though these colors are a little bit less varied. I'm sure I'll still be able to make it work, although I'm hoping that I can use my normal pack. Okay, so real quick, this is how you reconstitute gouache. You give them a nice little spritz with the spray bottle you use to mist your dying plants, and then you give them a quick stir with the sculpting tool because you don't know where your palette knife is. Then you wait 20 minutes, stir again. Gross.
How do you guys keep from wanting to eat your gouache?
And finally, you make the obligatory Sam Raimi Spider-Man reference.
I like being bad. It makes me happy.
Then you realize it only kind of sort of worked, so you go to sleep and bam, it's the next day and we have usable paint now. Okay, I'm gonna go ahead and get started on this sketch, which I've actually decided to do digitally because honestly, I only want to worry about one difficult thing today, and getting anatomy and proportions right is not the thing that I'm worried about. So at least if the sketch is good, then maybe if I fail at the gouache part, we'll still come out with a sort of good finished product. To my iPad. Hello there. So I have my sketch all printed out. I'm all set up here. And thankfully my gouache reactivated pretty easy. Actually, I just like stuck a bunch of water in there and let it sit for a couple of hours and then let that sit overnight. I've also taken the liberty of watching a couple of gouache tutorials.
Between gouache and watercolor paint like you would do with watercolor.
Even though I use almost the same for the layer to dry for.
My back!
And basically what I've gathered from that is that I'm going to start by using this build up to
Hi,
more
my name is
opaque.
Kira, and something that you should know about me is that I'm not good at being on camera.
Why can't I speak English? I think the best move for me here is to start out using more of like a watercolor technique,
Paint like you would do with watercolor.
and then to basically build up to using more of an opaqueness and more of my acrylic technique. We'll see what works best, but I'm determined to make gouache paint work for me. All of the cool kids can do it. I want to be one of the cool kids. I'm gonna learn how to do it. Okay, I'm just stalling at this point. Let's get started.
I'm gonna get into some Q&A questions a little bit later, but first I'm gonna talk a little bit about the art process because oh boy, was it a process. So like I said, my strategy going into this painting was to lean more into the watercolor side because last time I attempted to use gouache, I think I left my paint way too thick and it just didn't layer well whenever I was blocking in the colors. So I wanted to keep the opacity lighter at first and build up layers over time. I remember skin tones being particularly difficult last time, so I tried to keep that part of this simple. Thankfully, one of my subjects was a dog, so I didn't have to worry about him too much, but for Bryn, I kind of started with a base layer, waited for that to dry, and then went in with a little bit more tonality. Basically doing the same thing I normally do, adding sort of rosy bits around the cheeks and on like the knees and all the joints and everything. You know, that classic Tumblr art style. The one where the nose is pink for basically no reason other than the fact that we artists with an anime background don't know any other way to show form and noses are our worst enemy. Anyways, that method of waiting for things to dry probably saved this painting because I was able to layer a lot easier, and if I wanted to blend, I could just reactivate the paint in that area and try to blend instead of trying to blend with everything wet. It just worked a lot better. I definitely want to try using gouache a bit more like acrylics in the future because my approach to this was pretty timid, but it was honestly pretty fun to try to capture some of my more water-based techniques because whenever I used watercolors a lot in the past, I was able to get a good bit of detail in my traditional work, and honestly, I miss that. I'm working on getting that much detail in my acrylic paintings, and it's possible, but honestly, it just takes longer to clean up all of my strokes and to get things looking crisp, and I'm lazy. But honestly, I think gouache could be a happy medium. I mean, it's kind of in the name. I've heard people call it like acrylic watercolor or something along those lines. But the fact that it works so well with water, I think will work to my advantage if I start using this medium, because then I can kind of like layer things up and sort of get a good base down, because whenever I work, I normally have like color blocks that I work from first, and then within those color blocks, I'll do like rendering. It's the same way that I work digitally, basically by having like a flat color layer and then building up like layers of shading on that. And right now what I'm doing with acrylics, which is absurd, is basically trying to use them like gouache by mixing them with water to build up those same layers, even though it doesn't mix very well with water, and whenever it dries it ends up being like really streaky. If you watched my first painting over my sketches video where I did the arcane painting, you can see whenever I was like kind of blocking in colors and mixing them with water a lot, it was doing that streaky thing. And now I realize, you know, even if I want to use acrylics for most of the painting, I could just put down gouache to block in my colors at first, and it would make it a lot easier on myself, or at the very least, make a lot more sense than mixing acrylic paint with that much water. Although it is still me, and to a certain extent, I frankly don't care because it's really convenient for me to work with acrylics and water. I don't know, I'm strange in that way. Even though by the end of this painting, I did end up liking gouache, I feel like this entire voiceover is just gonna be an angel and a devil on my shoulder being like, on one side, gouache is great, it's practical, you should use it. And on the other side, the devil is just like, hey, keep mixing water with acrylic paint. It's what's comfortable. and it confuses your audience. I can't explain it. I just got really, really cozy, comfy using acrylic paint, and it's addictive for me at this point because it's really satisfying for me to use. I love how opaque it is, and also the acrylics that I have are quite nice, and the colors mix really well. I'm almost out, honestly, and it's gonna be really, really hard for me to not just go and buy another of that same palette and then feel the need to use it over gouache to justify the fact that I spent more money on that palette. I mean, if I spend money on something, then I've got to use it, right? Okay, that was a bit of a tangent, but getting back into the art. Okay, long story short, I like gouache. I think I was able to make it work for me, but in the end, I'm still just a little bit too addicted to acrylic paint. I think I'm gonna start using gouache more often. I think it could be really fun to use with some landscape studies or just some landscape paintings in general, because I do like using acrylic paint for that. But I think the layering qualities of gouache just cater themselves well to some cute little landscape portraits. So maybe you'll see me using gouache a little bit more often, and hopefully if I get some practice at it, maybe it'll appear in my art supply rotation more often. It's starting to win me over just a little bit. Hi, it's a couple days later from when I actually finished the art, and let me just tell you, this optimistic attitude that I had in the beginning of this voiceover didn't really take throughout the end of the art process, because holy crap, it whipped my small rectangular Lego shaped rear end. Once I got past blocking in all the colors and actually working on all of the details in lighting and making it look like a painting rather than a paint by number that you would find in a Dollar Tree. Basically, all the artistic knowledge that I've gained in my last 12 years of life completely vanished from my brain, and I spent the final day of working on this basically just futzing around with it and trying to put colors in places, hoping that it would make it look good. Is that anyone else's art process? Because it certainly is mine. I think it ended up looking alright-ish by the end, but that was after hours of just staring at it and only working on it once in a while, which is why the recordings near the end of the video kind of just stop and start sporadically, and they're kind of all over the place because I kept going to areas and being like, what does this area of the painting need? And then I would look at it for like 2 or 3 minutes, and then I would realize I was still recording, and then I would delete that recording, and then I would go back to it and try to paint on it, and it just didn't look good. So if you're wondering what the strategy was for the rest of this painting, there wasn't one, but that's okay. This is the beginning of my gouache journey, and I just want to authentically share the process with you because my art is far from perfect, and if you've seen just one of my videos, you'll know I struggle a lot. Sometimes you just make art that's kinda mid, and that's okay. Also, I've been using more slang that the youths use to appeal to my audience that is the youth. So, what's up, kids? How about that Elvis? He's pretty cool, right? Gotta appeal to the hip demographic, you know what I mean. To get into the characters I'm drawing, I decided to go with Bryn, aka Valkyrie, and Drew, aka Anubis, because I thought they looked cool, and they're kind of the characters that you're introduced to sort of first in the game. Bryn is kind of the character that you play as at the beginning of the game, and then whenever your friend gets kidnapped and you get your Esper powers, you go to Esper Academy, I don't remember what it's called, and Drew starts to train you on your Esper abilities. And I like to think that they have a cool mentor-apprentice dynamic, and Drew is a posh British doggo that likes to drink tea. And if you know anything about me, those are all traits that appeal to the reptilian part of my brain. Also, have you seen Bryn? She's pretty much what I wanted to look like in high school. Also, she's a rock star, and Valkyries are from Norse mythology, I think. Maybe. Subscribers, help me out here. And for some reason, in my mind, there's a weird connection between classic rock and Norse mythology. I think it's because of Led Zeppelin. Anyways, because these characters are mentor-mentee, I decided to draw them in a fun action pose together, and I think it looks pretty cool. Okay, I stopped filming that first day I was working on this so that I would have some sunlight, and it's still raining outside, so I'm sorry this recording is probably going to be really, really dark. Alright, now let's get on to some Q&A questions, and this section of the video is only for the cool kids who watch this far, so if you're here, what's up? How's it going? Thanks for being with me today. The first question comes from Max Wuhuri Art, which You know, this is just a blanket apology for every single person whose name I mispronounced today. I am so sorry. Do you guys want a video where I hire a dialect coach for English? Because I think I need one. But anyways, they ask, do you like cheese? Which, it's weird because I had multiple people asking me if I liked cheese, so I don't know. There seems to be demand for this question. But yes, I love cheese. As someone who grew up with a brother who was vegetarian, cheese seemed to be a prominent fixture of my life in my childhood. I also have a grandmother who was from Germany, and my dad, I like to call him European, even though he was born and raised in the Deep South. He was a flight attendant for a number of years, so he spent a lot of time in Europe, and his mother was also European. She was from Erlangen, Germany, and whenever I was a kid, he would bring fancy airline cheese home for my brother and I to eat. So we just had lots of cheese around, and that's why I love cheese so much. My oma just had a bunch of fancy cheese around too, like brie and a bunch of cheeses that I don't remember the name to. But my favorite cheeses are like provolone, Gouda, dill Havarti, goat cheese is also pretty good, and also some more like basic cheeses. Like I love a good pepper jack, you know what I'm saying? A good Monterey Jack, a good Colby Jack, all the jacks. And I'm sorry, I didn't mean to just spend 1.5 minutes discussing my preferences for cheese, but I felt that it's something that you guys really wanted to know. So another question that I weirdly got a lot of was whether or not I like pineapple on pizza, which one of those was asked by confused ... And yes, I love pineapple on pizza. I believe that it is a natural way to eat pizza, and if you disagree with me, I respect you, but I think you're really missing out. Something you guys should know about me, I just really like food, and I honestly don't encounter a lot of food that I don't like, or at least food that I won't eat. If it's food, I'm pretty down with it in general. A few people also asked what my favorite dinosaur was, and I'm pretty sure it's called a Stegosaurus. Is that what it's... Hold on. Yes, that's correct. It's a Stegosaurus. I just really like the little spiny bits on its back, and I feel like I'm a kindred spirit with that dinosaur because that's also kind of what my posture looks like. Okay, on to a more art-specific question. A couple of people asked this, but this one is specifically from Kant_draw, who asks, how do you get over art block? Any useful tips for getting out of it? And they say, P.S. love your stuff, and thank you. Love you too. I'm going to kind of cover the questions about burnout in this one too, because I also had questions about art block and burnout, which they're kind of the same thing, they're kind of not. For me, there's like two kinds of art block / burnout. One of them is when you have all of the ideas in the world, but your art skills just aren't working for you, and you just can't like perform as well as you would like to because you're burned out, you're exhausted, and your abilities don't work. And to me, that's like the worst feeling. That's probably the one that I get more often, because whenever you're just doing art or doing creative things all the time, you can get really artistically exhausted, even if you're not like drained of inspiration, if that makes sense. I would say I'm kind of experiencing that a little bit right now, where there's so many things that I want to do and so many projects that I want to make, and not only do I feel like I don't really have enough time to make them, but if I do too much high intensity creating, like making illustrations and physical items in too short of a period of time, I will burn out along the way, because I do kind of personally need time to like learn in between and do like art studies and just kind of brush up on my skills, and then also time to do art for myself between like YouTube projects or work projects. I think art that you do for yourself that no one really sees is really important, and as I've gotten older, I've realized how important it is to staying kind of creative and growing as a creative person, so that can get a little bit frustrating. I think that's why I find sketchbooking to be so relaxing and valuable, because it's something that you guys will see eventually, and I do kind of post those sketches on social media as I do them, but ultimately that's just for me. It's kind of just for my eyes to see. So it's something that I can use for work and for YouTube later, but at the time of working on each page, it's kind of just for me. Second kind of art block for me is where your skills and abilities are working just fine, but you just don't feel like creating anything. Head empty, no thoughts. And this for me kind of happens just whenever I'm in like a bout of depression, or whenever I just kind of lacking motivation. I don't really feel like doing anything. And my solution for both of these kinds of art block / burnout is to just take time off whenever I need it, really. This is actually advice that I got from one of Rachel Maxey's videos whenever someone asked her the same question and gave that answer, and for some reason in my brain I was like, wow, revolutionary. I actually really hadn't thought about just taking time off or not doing something whenever I'm too stressed out to do it. Here's the thing about social media and YouTube. It sucks for artists, and it's just about the most unnatural thing in the world. If you look at how art was was done historically, people would spend way more time working on their craft, honing it, getting really good at it. And if a painting took 300 hours to do, that painting would just take 300 hours to do, and they wouldn't try to get it done in 2 days for a YouTube video, or to post daily on social media, or to post daily on TikTok. Regardless if you're like a content creator and you like to post your art on the interweb somewhere, or you're just a hobbyist and you're trying to improve to get better for yourself, my point is, art is not supposed to be this fast-paced, corporatized thing. In the current landscape of how art is treated in the entertainment industry and on the internet in general, I just find to be ridiculous. So I guess what I'm trying to say is, if you get art block and you just need to step away from creating for a little bit so that you can recharge, that's okay. That's kind of what you have to do. There are ways to power through it day to day. That's kind of what I have to do, but you have to take a break eventually. You cannot be creating 24/7 all the time. It's not how your brain works. Some people might experience art block more rarely and they're able to stay creative more often and just keep going. That's just kind of who they are. But if you're someone who gets art block a lot and that's really frustrating to you, first of all, that's normal. And if you're someone who also gets like depression or anxiety, I totally feel you there, because I have the same thing going on. There's seasons of my life where it can get really bad, and expecting yourself to stay creative during those times is just putting a lot of pressure on yourself. It can be really, really frustrating whenever you want to create so bad, but you're just not in the headspace to do it, or you're burned out, or just for some reason you got art block going on, but like, it's okay to just not force yourself to do it. That's what I recommend. But for tips on how to get out of an art block, what I do recommend is, once you're well rested and everything, go and do other activities and things that you like to do. Reconnect with whatever motivates you to draw in the first place. For me, for the most part, it's like movies, TV shows, other artists, other media that I like. Pretty much if I'm resting, I am also consuming. So once I'm recharged, it doesn't take long for an idea to pop into my head and then for me to just desperately have to go draw it or make a thing, and then I'm right back where I want to be. But I also recommend, just spend time being a person. I think we as creatives sometimes have a tendency to lock ourselves away from the world and just get in the zone of the interwebs and seeing people online and being like, oh, I want to do that too, I want to create that too. And sometimes, by golly, we just forget that we're also human beings who need to leave the house. What I recommend for that, go outside, spend time in nature, spend time with friends. If you have other hobbies you enjoy, spend time doing those other hobbies that you enjoy. One of the hobbies that I have isn't art, is just going for a run, because it really helps with my depression and anxiety. It gets those good chemicals going in my brain, and then I also get to leave the house and listen to the Jenna Julian podcast. So it ticks both boxes of getting out of the house and spending time with friends. Fun fact, I have such a parasocial relationship with Jenna Marbles and Julian Solomita that I frequently have dreams that we hang out and spend time together. In my dreamscape, Julian Solomita is my YouTube mentor, and he teaches me how to film things well and make good videos. Is that really, really weird? Comment below. I just went on for way too long about that, but my advice is, if you're having art block or burnout, stop. Take a nap, do other things, and when you feel like doing art again, do some art. Aqualine Lockhart asks, do you ever plan to pursue art as a full-time career? I know you mentioned being an engineering student, so are you planning to go into engineering and keep art as a side gig? Basically, I have no idea. Art is my full-time job at the moment. It's kind of split between YouTube and freelance work. I've basically scheduled out work until the end of December, and then at the end of December, I have to figure out what the heck I'm doing. So maybe then I'll get a job as a drafter, because I have graduated and I do have 2 degrees. Now, don't let those degrees fool you. I have degrees in building construction technology and engineering technology. So they're both associate's degrees, which in my mind I like to think add up as a full degree, but it's not nearly as prestigious as a 4-year degree, but I did spend 3.5 or 4 years in college, so I went to community college because I didn't want student debt, so that's the story behind that. But yeah, basically the answer to that is I'm going to pursue whichever one will actually pay my bills, because I desperately want my own place to live, but I live in a a really rural area and there is no housing around here, so I'm going to have to move somewhere that actually has housing, and I can't afford that right now. So I'm basically just playing it by ear right now, but the priority is going to be financial stability because I am a member of the I lose insurance when I turn 26 club, so I am either going to have a job that has benefits or make enough money to buy into insurance and be able to put a roof over my head, which is hard to do whenever you work as an artist on the internet, so we'll see. Speaking of making enough money to put a roof over my head, I'm probably going to start a Patreon soon to see if that helps, so let me know if that's something you guys would want to do. I'm probably going to post my videos like a day early on there and then also have like PDF scans of my sketchbooks and goodies like that, so let me know if that's something you want, because that might help to make this whole art thing a little bit more realistic. And I also need to get some new filming gear, so that would help me to afford some new filming gear. And that leads me into my next question, which is from CJ the Fox, who asks, what do you recommend for managing time, also staying motivated and following through on a project rather than leaving it halfway done and moving on to another? For the time management part, I don't. I'm actually really bad at managing my time. I used to be really good about it, like in high school. I don't know what happened to me. Probably depression and procrastination. It's also kind of hard to manage your time when you only have about 4 days to make a video and editing takes you forever. But I basically have a to-do list of all the things that I have to get done that day or that week, and I have little stars next to the things that are like high priority, and I try to budget tasks into what can I realistically get done this day. And if I don't get it done that day, I have to stay up late and work because everything is due on a deadline, so I don't recommend my methods. I need to get better at time management. But for finishing projects, I would say YouTube is actually a really high motivator because it is my source of income. So if I don't get the project done for that week's video, I don't make any money that week. On the more positive side, it does give me a huge boost of serotonin whenever I post a video and you guys are really excited about whatever I've made. So I do like the weekly sort of structure of taking on a project and then having to finish it because it does motivate me and basically make me finish a lot of the projects that I would be making anyways if I wasn't making a video about it. I do create way more than I used to, which I do really like because creating is very fulfilling for me. So even though it kind of sucks sometimes whenever I'm like, well, I don't really feel like doing this, but I basically have to. It builds a lot of creative endurance because your brain just kind of gets used to doing things that it maybe finds a little bit unpleasant. Like forcing yourself to keep working on a gouache painting that you don't find to be particularly aesthetically pleasing. I also got a couple of questions that were like, how do you find time to create as a student? For the record, I'm not a student anymore. I'm just doing this right now. I graduated in May. But whenever I was a student, doing commissions and freelance art, and then eventually YouTube was my job, so I would basically just allocate the time that I would have taken to go work a part-time job and spend that doing art stuff because, again, it was my source of income, so I had to do it. And this was also made easier because of COVID and the lockdown because my college was traditional in-person classes for the first couple of years that I was going, and then whenever I started doing more like art as my job part-time, they actually switched to online classes. So I was really in charge of my schedule and I could kind of just do homework and assignments whenever I needed to and then just focus on work for the most part. And this worked especially well in like my programs of study, building construction and engineering, because in building construction, we just had classes in the morning from like 8 until noon. So after that, I could come home and just work on work because my professor also gave me like work credit. So I could skip one of the labs and just come home and like do my job. And then for engineering, I actually really liked the work and I didn't find it to be too difficult. So even though I did freak out about literally every assignment and I was super obsessive about getting straight A's, my professors were actually really chill and they didn't really grade that harshly. So engineering technology was a good time. I just wanted to clarify that because my college experience was overall pretty flexible and not everyone might have that same kind of flexibility in their college experience. So if you find it difficult to create and do college classes, there's nothing wrong with you. I was just very fortunate and the timing kind of worked out because, you know, COVID hit and I started doing YouTube during COVID, so I kind of had enough time to focus on that before classes really ramped up again. Also, a pro for community college is that they expect you to be working part-time jobs while you're in school because most people can't afford to not do that. Also, a lot of the students are adults going back to college, so they kind of have to be flexible because people have kids and full-time jobs. So if you get your work done and you're efficient, they're generally pretty understanding of you needing to like skip live classes and stuff like that. Okay, I need to hurry up with these questions. Lavender Lynn asks, when in your life did you start getting invested into the spooky season? Literally since I exited the womb, because my dad was really into Halloween whenever we were kids because his parents made it really fun for them. So trick-or-treating was always a really big deal and we would all dress up. I think my earliest Halloween costume that I can remember, I was a pumpkin and I was a really cute pumpkin. I'm also an October baby, so you might just say it's in my blood. My family has also been hosting the friend group Halloween party since I was probably like 16. I don't know, man, kids who were born in the late 90s who have October birthdays, we're just built different. Segueing right into the next question, Garden Faye asks, how old are you? What age did you start taking art seriously? And are you going to dye your hair another color? And if so, what color? I'm old. I'm 23 and I turned 24 October 9th of this year. I've been into art since basically I exited the womb. That is the running joke on my channel. But I started taking it seriously probably around the age of 13. I started being a chronically online artist at probably the age of 11, which don't let your kids be online at 11. But I got a DeviantArt profile probably around 12 or 13, and that's around whenever I started doing commissions and I started trying to really improve at my art. I did commissions for DeviantArt points, which I slowly transitioned into real US currency, so I was indeed an enterprising little 13-year-old. As for my hair, I think I'm going to go back platinum blonde because I really miss it. I like doing edgier colors, but honestly, it's hard to make colors look good with my skin tone because as we've established, I am the color of the inside of a salmon. I really do not like it. And a lot of hair colors just make me look like I'm sunburned all the time. So platinum blonde it is, although I am kind of thinking about adding like a ginger streak to my bangs, or because I'm really obsessed with Jules' hair from season 1 of Euphoria, I'm thinking about doing a pink fade on the ends. We'll see if any of those ideas stick. Finally, for the last question, Melissa Phelps asks, what sketchbook number are you on? 3. Well, 3.5. I got halfway through my 3rd one and then I stopped working in it, so I'm kind of on 4 now, but we don't count it. When did you start drawing seriously / have you always been into art? I kind of just answered that. And finally, do you think you'll try gouache again? Yes. Anyways, that's all I have time for this video because it's sponsored and I don't want it to be way too long. I'll either answer the rest of the questions either in a sketchbook session or a future painting video. I'm thinking I'm gonna do either one of those next. So hopefully you won't have to wait too long until you get your question answered. I'm going to try my best to get to all of them next time. I'm just really long-winded with my answers because I want to give a good answer. So sorry if this was a super rambly video. I'm a super rambly person. Anyways, this is how the art turned out. I think I did okay for basically my second time trying gouache. I think if I have qualms with anything, it's actually the background, but the characters themselves I think look pretty okay. Anyways, thank you so much for coming with me on this gouache journey. Remember to check out Dislyte. You can download it for free from the link in my description. And if you want to support me in other ways, you can like, comment, subscribe, turn on notifications, and check out my store. When you do, you become an honorary leaf because I wouldn't be a pile of leaves without you guys. But thank you so much for watching till the end. I obviously still don't know what I'm doing. I will see you guys next week, but now if you'll excuse me, I am very busy. One of you commented saying that I should make a thing, and my little goblin fingers have to make it. Bye.